Honorable panelists and distinguished guests, welcome to the webinar entitled The Impact of Green Deal on Industry and an Action Plan, organized by Sabanci University SUNUM Nanotechnology Research Center. Sabanci University is one of the top ranking universities in Turkey, and in 2010, the university, as a model initiative, has established SUNUM Nanotechnology Research and Application Center, a center of excellence in nanotechnology research. In 2016, subsequent to a very long and competitive screening process by the ministry, SUNUM was selected as one of the 4 national research infrastructures to be funded by the state under law number 6550, with a mission to create socio-economic added value through commercialization of research results. So SUNUM works very closely with industry in the form of strategic partnerships for collaborative, contracted research and joint initiatives. As we all know, the adoption of the Paris Agreement has put on a lot of responsibilities on industry. Sustainable production technologies with their carbon neutral targets are now in the immediate agendas of industrial companies in all sectors. Thus, today, we are organizing this webinar to create an awareness for the urgency of the topic amongst all stakeholders and seek ways possibly to contribute within our existing capabilities to the development of a national roadmap and its implementation throughout the major sectors, but particularly in the manufacturing industries. We have very distinguished panelists today. Our keynote speaker is the head of the European Union delegation to Turkey, the Honorable Ambassador Mr. Nicholas Meyer-Landrut. Our next panelist is Mr. Fatih Özkadı, head of EU Green Deal Task Force and the chair of Turkish Industry and Business Association Environment and Climate Change Working Group. And with the kind permission of the President of the European Patent Office, Mr. Antonio Campinsos, our third panelist is Mr. Jan Meneer, Chief Economist of the European Patent Office. We are grateful to all our panelists for sparing the time and accepting our invitation to take part in our panel. It was announced that the opening speech for this panel was to be delivered by Professor Hasan Mandal, the president of Turkey's Scientific and Technological Research Council. Unfortunately, Professor Mandal was carried away due to an unexpected high-level engagement. Dr. Şiir Kılkış, advisor to the president, will be welcoming you on his behalf. We would like to express our gratitude to Dr. Kılkış for accepting this challenge at such a short notice and invite her to deliver her speech. I again thank you and give the microphone to Dr. Kılkış.
Distinguished moderator, distinguished panelists, greetings to everyone on behalf of the President of the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, Professor Dr. Hasan Mandal. I share my greetings to all distinguished colleagues and participants. With this, I would like to share some opening remarks to welcome everyone to this very important panel. And for the impact of the Green Deal on Industry and National Action Plan, the opening remarks will be focused on succeeding together for zero carbon emissions and the Green Deal. And once again, our appreciation to SUNUM for organizing this important webinar on behalf of Professor Dr. Hasan Mandal. Here we can see that the most important risks, global risks, when we look at the likelihood and impact, is coming from those risks that are also connected with the findings of the 6th Assessment Cycle Working Group 1 of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, failure of climate action or biodiversity risks or the human nature interactions. These are very serious risks, but whether these risks will take place will depend on our solution-oriented approaches. And for this, the crucial race to zero emissions have started, and there are roles for everyone. This includes the companies, the countries, the organizations, the cities, the universities, and every single institution. We have a role in supporting this race to zero to eliminate as much as possible the risks of uncontrolled and unabated greenhouse gas emissions. And in this race to zero, which was an initiative heading toward COP26, which we completed, but continuing to 2050, there has been about 10,000 companies that are participating in the UNFCCC Race to Zero for net zero carbon emissions. And this is showing the role of the private sector all across the world, and including currently and it's increasing. 50 firms with net zero targets from Turkey. We are supporting the race to zero. And we believe, as TÜBİTAK, that research, development, and innovation will have a crucial role in allowing all of these actors to come together to support this crucial target. When we look at the present status of the world today, the CO2 emissions per unit of production value coming from the industry is different across the world. And this is one of the indicators that are monitored under the Sustainable Development Goal on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And we see that for this to be successful by the year 2050, the CO2 trend of about 0 tons per unit production value will be important. And for the industry, this is important for the competitiveness, important for mobilizing the research, development, and innovation to come to these targets, and also supporting the national net zero targets. So this is clean production by providing more value added, more competitive products, more clean relation with the environment, and eventually supporting sustainable development for the countries as well. As Turkey, together with the ratification of the Paris Agreement, we have a 2053 target for net zero emissions. And all of the stakeholders of Turkey, we are trying to support our national target for 2053. And this requires, of course, all support from everyone, the local actors, the companies, the firms. And when we take the science-based targets, there are some principles: assessing, interpreting, prioritizing, measuring, setting, and discussing, acting, tracking according to the capabilities and opportunities that are available for industries. This is both a bottom-up process involving the companies who are volunteering for these targets to support the nationally determined contributions of the countries, and Turkey is going toward net zero by 2053. As TÜBİTAK, one thing that we learned from the COVID-19 crisis was mobilizing the ecosystem to overcome these challenges. And this includes climate mitigation adaptation, net zero greenhouse gas emission targets, and related aspects, including Industry 5.0, which not only the digitalization, but also the environmental aspects and opportunities for the industry. And we are going to support the Paris Agreement with the mobilization of our research, development, and innovation ecosystem. And as TÜBİTAK, this is to emphasize that we are very strongly dedicated to supporting our ecosystem, to addressing climate change and environmental challenges. And we see that science-based opportunities towards addressing climate change and environmental challenges are very important, in line with our national 2053 net zero emission targets. We are opening, we are giving some priorities in all of our support programs. We have the European Green Deal priorities in different programs for our ecosystem. And the green growth challenges, it's widespread from entrepreneurs to the universities to the private sector. And in our international collaborations, of course, with the European Green Deal, this is very much important. And the Green Deal Action Plan, which I'm sure the panelists will be focusing on today, this is also being supported by a green growth technology roadmap that is being prepared by TÜBİTAK in coordination with the Ministry of Industry and Technology. And our Science and Society is also mobilizing this important challenge. So as TÜBİTAK, we are focusing on the impact-oriented of co-creation models for the ecosystem, and this is including the priorities that we give across our support programs with the European Green Deal, both on the side of knowledge, co-creation-based new knowledge production with the high technology platforms, and also on the human resources. So our industry, for example, in the industrial doctorate program, is supporting the doctoral students on sustainability themes, on environmental themes, on new advanced materials. So this is a real mobilization of our ecosystem. And in this, we are in our national co-creation-based models, for example, in the high technology platforms, there are already platforms that are focusing on green growth-related aspects, including advanced materials, SUNUM, it has a very active role, nanotechnology, solar energy technologies, and these are the examples from our existing high technology platforms. In our new call, this is including both priorities based on high technology areas as the name of our support program, and priorities based on the European Green Deal. So this is one way we are diffusing the priorities of the European Green Deal across our support programs. And another way is in our bottom-up programs, especially for these small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs, out of a total point of 100, we are giving priorities for project applications addressing specifically the priorities in the European Green Deal. So this is one alignment of the Turkish ecosystem with the European Green Deal, and we're very much motivated supporting this. And this picture has great importance for us because now we are associated to Horizon Europe. The signature ceremony was held on October 27th in Brussels, and we are participating with same conditions as EU member states in Horizon Europe, and we are ready to undertake this co-creation-based collaboration towards supporting climate neutrality targets of the European Green Deal. The net zero emissions of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 through research, development, innovation, economic growth that is decoupled from resource use, and no person and no place being left behind. And we realize that this is a complete connected package of many, many different strategies, including the European Green Deal, the biodiversity strategy, the new circular economy action plan, the EU energy system integration strategy, and the green industrial policy for Europe, where it's important for us to pursue jointly undertaking the green and digital twin transitions for competitiveness. And we believe our industry is establishing those connections with the university, with the public research institutes, with the excellence centers, with high technology platforms to support the European Green Deal. And with my connection also to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I would like to share just 2 slides. Of course, when we're trying to avoid the extreme climate intensified events that are already taking place, but every ton of greenhouse gas emissions will determine what the outcomes will be. So the frequency and intensity, these will change according to what we do, what we take as the ecosystems, as the industry, as the universities, as the institutions. And the European Green Deal, it is a science-based policy following one of the scenarios of the IPCC relating to the very low emissions scenario. So this is the shared socioeconomic pathway represented concentration pathway, SSP 1.9 scenario. And the reason that this scenario is so important is when this scenario is realized, the extreme heat, the heavy precipitation, the drought, the fire weather, the acidification of the ocean seas will be much more limited. It will not be zero, but it will be much more limited. And here we see that for a future with less global warming effects, it is of great importance to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030 and towards zero in the year 2050 by mid-century for CO2 emissions. And we can see the progress of what has been changed since the pre-industrial levels. But if we reduce the CO2 emissions by 50% in the next decade and coming towards zero emissions with all the capabilities of the country supporting this target, including Turkey, including the European Union, including the entire European continent, we will be able to realize this very low emission scenario, but only when there is sustained and rapid action to make this possible. And this is one of the major findings of the first contribution of the working groups to the 6th assessment cycle. With this, I welcome you all once again, on behalf of the president of TÜBİTAK, Professor Dr. Hasan Mandal, and we are looking very much towards listening to your contributions, the valuable, distinguished contributions of the panelists. And once again, succeeding together for zero carbon emissions and the Green Deal is very important for all of us, including the industry, the institutions, and TÜBİTAK. Thank you and greetings on behalf of TÜBİTAK.
Thank you, Dr. Şiir Kılkış. It was a pleasure listening to your enthusiastic approach, and we are really very encouraged as the academia here. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Ambassador, Mr. Meyer Landrut, without keeping anybody much more in waiting. Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm happy to be with you today for this very important exchange. So I wish to greet the distinguished rector, the ladies and gentlemen, the panelists, those who listen to us. Dear friends, I think we are all around the same objective. The climate crisis, as we just also have heard again, is the defining challenge for the years to come. And contrary to the pandemic, there's not a single vaccination which will help us, or a booster vaccination, but we will have to do many things in every sector. And this climate action is a global and collective responsibility. We all have seen the weather extremes and their consequences. I don't think I need to repeat this. We know how much the global warming over the last decades has contributed to this global warming, climate change. The diagram showed by TÜBİTAK just was very explicit on this and very telling. And if we want to reach the target of 1.5 degree, not more than 1.5 degree global warming by the end of the century, we actually have to act now. I think my first message is we should not think this is very far down the road and we can deal with it later. No, if we are not starting to deal with it very seriously now, we will not achieve it. So the 2050 goal, climate neutrality, which is shared by most and by those who have signed the Paris Agreement, and also Turkey now, is something which we can only achieve if we start to really focus on these issues now. On the European side, and this has been described, and I will not make too long a presentation of it, the key instrument to contribute from the European side to this reduction, this fight of climate change, is what we call the Green Deal. The Green Deal, and I think this is something which is important also to understand, is not an environment policy. It is the new comprehensive growth, environment, social investment strategy of the European Union. It is something which is cross-sector and which needs to involve every part of public and private activity so that it can achieve. So we are now working in the European Union on what we call a very large or big toolbox, where we try to address the different dimensions: economic growth, sustainability, jobs, energy, food security, public health, and. So it's everywhere. I think this is the second big message. To reach this objective, Green Deal policies, green transformation policies will have to be applied to every sector of public and private life. We have, as a European Union, put our overall objective of greenhouse gas emissions to be neutral by 2050 into a law. This is the way European Union works. So it's a legal obligation for all member states. Now, to reach this, and this is something which is, of course, also very well known, to reach carbon neutrality, this will require significant investment. It will require significant investment both from the public and the private sector. Additional investment to decarbonize power generation, industry, transport, to improve energy efficiency of buildings. If I take my home country, Germany, Still 30% of CO2 emissions stem from houses. So you see that it's not only industry and production of industrial production which need to be tackled. And we are also all aware that the emissions, for example, in the transport sector are still increasing. So we have areas where we have not yet even tipped the tide, where we still need to reach this. On the other hand, and that is the next message, to invest in climate change, to invest in mitigating global warming is also something which comes with important benefits. It's not a burden, it is a necessity, and it brings benefits and opportunities. When we see that we want to reduce, let me take 2 or 3 examples, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030, the volume of fossil fuels which need to be imported to the European Union would fall by over 25% compared to 2015. With all that brings with it in terms of advantages, this will reduce imports, this will reduce transport, this will reduce dependency on also producer countries. Another example is air pollution. If we have a 55% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030, air pollution will be reduced by 60% if we continue to implement also the existing measures on reducing air pollution. This will help to improve the health of Europeans and those who apply these measures, and improving the health reduces health damages and will also lead to less expenses in the health sector. Now, these estimations are always complicated, but we estimate that it will by 2030 reduce our costs by about 110 billion euro compared to 2015. So there are big gains also for the society in these issues. So we need to get to a situation where growth is decoupled from greenhouse gas emissions. We were starting to see this in Europe, but we are by far not far enough in this direction. So what we are trying to do as European Union, what we call Green Deal, what is the green transformation, is not something which Europe can do alone. So that is the next issue. It is an international issue, and it requires international cooperation. And in this sense, we are really very glad to see that Turkey ratified the Paris Agreement this autumn. This will now lead to a situation where we are on the common path. We have the common objectives. For Turkey, it's to be carbon neutral is 2053. For the EU, it's 2050. Well, we can live with this difference of the 3 years if we reach it. And when we look at the COP26, which just took place in Glasgow, well, I will not make a comprehensive analysis of the conference, but I would say we have seen some progress, but we clearly also see that much more needs to be done. COP26 is not the end of the road of the efforts. It is an important step. Many important things have been achieved, but we are not there yet. And it is interesting to note that the national contributions, the national targets by many members to this COP agreement have been enhanced since 2015. But we also see that when we add it up, and the scientific research added up, it does not yet assure us of reaching the 1.5 degree target. So we will need all to do more and enhance our national contributions. And in Glasgow, the decision was taken to increase the ambition level already until the next conference in 2022. This is a big challenge now for everybody to do this. Now, there are many different instruments and many different tracks and action plans on different sectors which are in place. But let me stress that I'm convinced that in the end, if we want to reach this carbon neutrality, we need to reduce carbon emissions, and to eliminate carbon emissions, we need a carbon pricing system. Without putting a price on carbon, we will not manage to transform industry, economy, but also transport and other sectors quickly enough. In the European Union, carbon pricing through our emission scheme, the trading scheme, is one of the key instruments. And the discussion in Europe now is about extending it also beyond energy production, beyond industry, to areas like transport, like housing, and so on. And I'm glad also to hear that in Turkey a debate on such a pricing mechanism has started. This is a very, very important thing. But once you have the targets, you then also need to put in place the mechanisms to reach them. Now, in terms of cooperation between EU and Turkey, you all know that there are many projects we finance in the area of climate action through EPA, through different projects in the environment, in institution management, and so on. I don't want to spend too much time on the individual projects, but I want to come back to what also Dr. Kilic said on research. And I think today and with you, this is the right place to say this. Research and innovation will play a key role in transformation. If we want to reach our objectives, it's the solution of tomorrow, the results of your research and development which will allow us to reach the common objectives. It's not it's not a status quo. We need research, we need results, we need development. We need you and your contribution on all the different areas. And here on the current or the previous Horizon 2020 program of the EU has recently made a Green Deal call of 1 billion euro. Turkey was already part of Horizon 2020. So this is an opportunity. This is something where the Turkish research community, where the Turkish industry should see how they can link with their European partners to be part of this. And even much more important, and that was also said, Turkey just recently signed the cooperation, the participation in the new research program. This new research program for the years 2021 to 27 has an overall budget of almost 100 billion euro. It's a lot of money. And the main areas which will be directly supported will be all within the scope of what we call green transformation, restoring oceans and waters, climate neutral smart cities, the soil deal for Europe, adaptation of climate change, social transformations. So I can only appeal to you to use this opportunity to enter into cooperations on research under this program. And I know how successful TÜBİTAK as the Turkish head organization, if I may call it like this, in this area has been over the past periods. Here is much to do and more to do for the future. So let me end by saying our future is also in the hands of the research community, and we count on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. We are very encouraged with your words. We know our duty. We have that has been reiterated now. So thank you very much. We would also like to welcome you to our center so that we can show you our facilities, this state-of-the-art research facility, which we are proud of and we are trying to maintain. We are more than happy to collaborate with our partners, European partners, and beyond. Thank you very much.
With pleasure.
Yes. Without any delay, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Fatih Özkadı, I will reintroduce him. He is the head of the EU Green Deal Task Force and the chair of Turkish Industry and Business Association, TÜSİAD, Environment and Climate Change Working Group. Yes, thank you, Mr. Özkatı. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. His Excellency, the Ambassador, Mr. Mayor London, dear Dr. Şiir Kılkış, dear Mr. Jan Meyner, and dear Ms. Fazilet Vardar, dear distinguished participants. It's a real pleasure to attend the impact of Green Deal on Industry and the National Action Plan webinar organized by Sabanci University. Today, I would like to talk about our approach in TÜSİAD working groups in terms of the climate change and Green Deal. As you know, the climate crisis and diminishing the resources are main concerns for our planet. The sixth assessment report is the code red for humanity, as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called. As TÜSİAD, we see the Paris Agreement as our strategic priority. The ratification of the agreement will be the enabler of the green transformation in our country. It is the beginning of a process that will accelerate the transformation. There are very positive developments recently. As you know, Turkey now has a 2053 carbon neutral goal and announced that our NDC will be updated accordingly. It is important to support this target with a roadmap, and effective implementation of this plan is crucial. As TÜSİAD, we believe that we will realize the green transformation with the cooperation of the public and business organizations. I believe that the ratification of the Paris Agreement, our mitigation and adaptation activities will gain even more momentum. In this context, it will be of great importance for industries to determine their own 2030, even 2050 reduction targets, and to create a roadmap for the carbon neutrality. This is also critical to benefit more from the global funds to be created in this field. As TÜSİAD, sustainability is one of our top priority, and our members are focusing on business objectives set according to UN Sustainable Development Goals. As being one of the major trade partners of the EU, it is of great importance for us to closely monitor developments, to be in close cooperation, and preserve the sustainable development of bilateral relations in the light of the emerging global trends. In order to tackle common issues such as climate change, we can increase joint efforts. In this respect, the Green Deal offers plenty of opportunities for cooperation. As a part of climate and energy policy of the EU, European Commission has announced a series of revisions and regulations under the package Fit for 55 of the Green Deal. Details of the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is called the CBAM, have been revealed under the draft legislation. We believe that it is necessary to set a fair, transparent, and predictable methodological approach. The effective consultation and the dialogue mechanism with the EU should be ensured to minimize costs in the transformation process of our businesses. A successful transition to climate neutrality will also depend on leveraging the digital technologies. Together with EU's renewed focus on twin transition, efforts for digital leadership will be a new competition area. According to the communication paper called 2030 Digital Compass, published by the EU Commission, it is indicated that 125 billion euro per year is needed in terms of ICT investment and skills to close the gap with the leading competitors in the US and China. It is obvious that the digital tools and data-driven technologies will be key enablers also for traceability throughout the whole value chain, which is required for the resiliency in post-COVID-19. We see that there is a significant amount of efforts in Turkey to adopt sustainability strategy in the way doing business. There still needs to be further actions taken by companies, but it can be said the Green Deal announcement was one of the levers that the companies have become more sensitive about the sustainability. There are increasing number of companies adapting their strategies to the new mechanism set by the Green Deal. However, there might still lack of the clear roadmap on how to manage the impacts when it comes to industry-specific challenging topics. As TÜSİAD, we see the green transformation as a top priority. In the fight against climate change, EU has set very ambitious goals through the European Green Deal that we believe. It is clear that the carbon neutrality can be only achievable with the collective effort of all stakeholders. As a leading business organization in Turkey, TÜSİAD perceives Green Deal as a model of economic growth focusing on decarbonized, fair, and inclusive development for all. On the way of the green transformation, various sectors and companies from different scales will need to reshape their structures and use their resources more efficiently. As Turkish business community, we highlight the need of a concrete roadmap for long time to address all developments in line with the EU Green Deal. As TÜSİAD, we follow recent developments very closely through our main platforms, Environment and Climate Change Working Group and the Green Deal Task Force. Through these groups, we are working on the green transition and the related business transformation in close contact with the relevant public institutions. We close in collaboration with the national and the international sectoral organizations, NGOs, and think tanks on identifying and analyzing the economic and environmental impacts of the Green Deal. We follow the EU agenda, prepare the position papers, and convey our views to the relevant European and the Turkish authorities. We organize a high-level webinars with private sector top executive managers to draw attention to the risk and the opportunities of the Green Deal. The meetings with the participation of the leading consultancy and think tank organizations offer great opportunities for our member companies at different sites to get different perspective of the coming legislation in order to sustain their competitiveness. As TÜSİAD, we discuss many aspects of the green transformation, such as circular economy, energy, foreign trade, digitalization, and finance. Since on the way of being a carbon neutral company, the huge efforts are needed for the transformation of the whole ecosystem. With the workshops, the consultations we organize with the members, best practices are shared in various areas such as energy efficiency, carbon footprint, carbon economy, etc., which enable the members to get technical assistance and examine internally their own processes. We will continue our efforts to determine the necessities and the responsibilities of the Turkish industry. In the future, we plan to continue all these efforts and be in close contact with our stakeholders. The collaborative and inclusive actions are needed more than ever in order to reach global climate neutrality and long-term sustainability goals. Smart and sustainable supporting strategies and policies for green and digital transformation will be key enablers to protect critical industries, employment, and as well as to ensure resilient value chains. The companies can only maintain their competitive position in international trade with the collective efforts in the entire value chain in light of EU Green Deal and taxonomy criteria, which aims to direct the investments towards sustainable projects and activities. The joint efforts to initiate adaptation program and defining risks and opportunities will be more critical. In the coming period, the compliance of the EU Sustainable Corporate Governance Initiative will play the biggest role in staying competitive for companies. As you know, this initiative aims companies to better manage sustainability-related matters in their own operations and value chains as regards social and human rights, climate change, environment, etc. This will require to better align the interests of companies, their shareholders, managers, stakeholders, and the society. In this transformation process, the digitization will also play a key role for traceability throughout the whole value chain, which is required for the resiliency in post-COVID-19. With the data-driven decisions, the benefit can be maximized with the related stakeholders. The finance is, of course, crucial for this transformation and to turn threats into opportunities. In order to access EU funds, the diplomatic relations must be developed in this respect and the new communication channels must be opened. It is important both to establish incentive mechanisms that will support these processes on the public side and to prepare a road plan for accessing the EU's funding resources. In this context, Horizon Europe will have a leverage effect. The agreement between the EU Commission and Turkey has recently been concluded for the period 2021-2027, as Dr. Şiir Kılkış explained. The which is enabling Turkey to officially participate in the Horizon Europe program. Our country has gained a strong momentum in recent years in the program. A resource more than the contribution paid in the EU framework programs had returned to Turkey regarding the call results announced in 2020 for the first time. I really would like to thank TÜBİTAK. Horizon Europe program will continue with a budget of 95.5 billion euros, and a significant part of this budget is devoted for combating the climate change. I believe that we will achieve successful results. I would like to conclude my speech with a final message. The Custom Union is one of the most important building blocks of Turkey integration with EU. The Custom Union enabled structural transformation of the exporting sectors, which led an increase in the competitiveness of the Turkey in international markets. On the other hand, it is obvious that the modernization of this agreement is essential in order to support today's competitive trade environment. We find the modernization critical, which will offer a substantial potential for global challenges such as climate change and digitalization. It's an honor and privilege to speak to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Özkatı, for your time and this very interesting contribution. As representing a research institute here, we would like to collaborate more and more to learn the real needs of the industry so that we can develop real projects targeting real needs for commercialization of research results and implementation of research data. So thank you for your contribution and perspectives on this. Now we have a couple of questions, but I will save them to the end, and I will hand the microphone to Mr. Jan Menier, representing the European Patent Office. He will also be talking to us about the academic perspective and how this is being reflected to patents and the development of know-how. Yes, thank you for sparing the time and being with us. And, the floor is yours.
Thank you. His Excellency Niklaus Meyer-Landrut, the distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here and today in this important event. And I would like to thank you, Mrs. Vardar, and the organizers for this fantastic opportunity. As the representative of the European Patent Office, I am not in a position to comment on all the facets of the Green Deal and National Action Plan, but I am also aware, like my organization, of the importance of innovation, the commercialization of technology, and therefore the patent system in the success of these endeavors. And this is why the EPO has established partnerships with other organizations, in particular the International Energy Agency, to better understand these needs, the technologies that play a critical role in the energy transition, and to monitor their developments and enable policymakers and investors to make better decisions on this basis. And this is the insights that I would like to share today, based on a joint study published this year in collaboration with the International Energy Agency on the topic of patents and the green energy transition, which you can see now. A first remark on the motivation of this work and of this topic concerns the role of innovation in the energy transition. And there, let me quote some statistics and some results from our colleagues in the International Energy Agency, which are reported on this slide, which represents the degree of maturities of the technologies that are needed to reach net zero emission in this chart by 2070. And as you can see here, we already have available a number of technologies of greener, decarbonized energies that need to be implemented and scaled up in order to reach net zero, to cut carbon emissions, but they are not sufficient. Actually, in order to achieve this goal in practice, a number of technologies will need to be implemented that are today not available in the market. They are still at the stage of demonstration or even prototyping. So the success critically depends actually on our collective ability to develop, scale up technologies that are not available today. The order of magnitude is about 35% of technologies needed, that about 35% of the technologies needed to shift to net zero by 2070 are still at the prototype or demonstration stage. And but if we move the date of net zero to 2050, the proportion is even higher because the step is higher. And in order to achieve that, we need even more technology solutions that can be rapidly implemented. So for 2050, the order of magnitude is 50% of the technologies that are not yet available on the market. So it is highly important to understand what are these technologies, to measure the speed of their development, and to support with appropriate policy and private investment the acceleration of their maturation and deployment. The EPO has, and the patent system has, of course, a role to play in that respect, in order to incentivize, to to incentivize investment in these technologies and in their commercialization. It also has a role to play in terms of information, in terms of knowledge. Why? Because any patent application, as you may know, has to be published, and together they provide an impressive wealth of information on ongoing technological change. This is something that has been recognized about 10 years ago by the European Patent Office, and that has led us to create a dedicated scheme for environmental technology, the so-called YO2 scheme, which is based on the expertise of our 4,000 examiners, and which makes it possible to search precisely millions of documents, classified in a very granular way, in all types of technologies related to climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. You have on the left-hand side of this chart, the highest possible level of classification in this scheme, but of course it's possible to search at a much more granular level. And this information is available for free in our various patent knowledge products, but databases online with ESPASnet, for instance. And the availability of this source of information is one of the reasons why it was interesting for the International Energy Agency to partner with us, and reciprocally. Actually, together we can exploit this information to inform policy, to interpret trends in patent data. And this is what has been at the basis of the study that we published earlier this year, which focused more specifically on patented technologies that are related to the energy transition. So excluding technologies related to waste and wastewater and to adaptation, to focus on all the already very broad set of low carbon technologies related to energy. There are a number of results and insights from this study that I would like to share today, but let us start with this one, which actually benchmarks our measures of patenting in the domain of low carbon energy, which you can see in dark gray on this chart, versus all technologies, whatever the sector, which you can see in gray, and also fossil fuel technologies, fossil fuel related technologies that you can see in light blue on the chart. This shows trends based on a level 100 in 2000 until 2019. And I think this chart is very important and interesting and insightful for further policy making. And in particular, it highlights two different growth patterns over the last 2 decades. The first one took place from 2000 approximately to 2013 approximately, and during this period we have been seeing a very sharp increase of innovation in low carbon technologies, low carbon energy technologies, like renewables, for instance, but not only. Much faster growth than what we could see in other sectors or in fossil fuel technologies. Actually, this growth has been of 12.5% every year on average, so really impressive as the result as one of the first results of the Kyoto Protocol and related policies. And indeed, the most of the innovation is located in countries that have been proactively implemented and trying to implement the Kyoto Protocol. So there is a link between policy and innovation. But what we can see afterwards is a dip actually of innovation in those fields, followed by a rebound in the most recent years, but at a slower rate. Actually, the rate of growth of innovation in low carbon energy technologies over the last 4 years has been of about 3% per year on average, much slower than what we have been seeing at the beginning of the decade. And this is a signal of alarm. We have not been maintaining the pace of innovation towards the green energy transition in recent years. This suggests that further policy support is required and strengthen the relevance of policy initiatives like the Green Deal in particular and similar national policies. So this is a note of alarm. There is, however, another interesting remark that can be made on this chart. If you look at the recent years and the light blue bars, you will see that innovation related to fossil fuel technologies has been decreasing during the last years, the last period of 4 years. And if we go back in time, which we did in the study, we see that such a 4 years decrease of patenting in fossil fuel technologies did not happen since World War II. So this is a major break. And this suggests, although it's a bit early to say or to confirm, this suggests a change of paradigm, whereby innovation resources, R&D efforts are shifting from fossil fuel technologies to low carbon energy technologies, albeit at a relatively low pace, or at least at a pace that it's not fast enough probably to achieve the innovation goals that we need to achieve by 2050. Let me now further elaborate on the nature of innovation related to low carbon energy. So what is behind this dark gray bar that I showed in the previous slide? And actually, together with the experts of the International Energy Agency, we have classified innovation in 3 main categories that are quite intuitive, at least for the first 2 ones. The first one is energy supply. So any type of technologies related to the production of clean energy, renewable energy, but also nuclear, for instance, which is decarbonized. The second one is end use, which is related to energy saving, such as progress in energy efficiency or fuel switching in any type of end use, in any type of industry, which you can see in dark gray in the charts. And you can see that these two, the supply side and the demand side, if you will, these 2 categories of energy, of low carbon energy technologies have been driving the fast growth that we observed in the first part of the decade until 2013, and they are largely dominated by end-use technologies. 60% of all the patents are related to end-use technologies. This is also an important message. The challenge of innovation is, yes, indeed, certainly in energy supply, but mainly in energy efficiency in all sectors. I think this was mentioned by Mr. Meyer-Landrut, for instance, in the case of housing. There is a need for innovation in the efficiency of heating in housing, and likewise in all industries. And this is what we see happening in the patent data. So we have seen a lot of innovation in those fields until 2013. This has been driving the fast growth of innovation in low carbon energy, but it has plateaued in the recent decade. And actually what we see now picking up and being the frontier of innovation is a new category of technologies which are more transformative, more systemic, and which we call enabling technologies. And it's important to have that in mind also to measure the magnitude of the challenge of the Green Deal and energy transformation. It's not only about changing the way in which we produce energy or the way in which we consume energy. It's very much now a challenge of changing in a more deeper way, the way in which we organize the entire energy system of all industries. So what are these enabling technologies? Actually, there are several of them, and all of them are cross-cutting and have an impact both on the production of energy and on the use of energy. They include energy storage technologies like batteries that have already been identified as a strategic by the EU, for instance. Smart grids, so the digitalization of energy distribution and consumptions, carbon capture and storage, or hydrogen, to cite the 4 main ones. And as you can see in this chart, although maybe it's a bit small, there are very much patents in these fields are very much overlapping with the patents in other sectors. For instance, as you know, batteries patents have a strong impact, are strongly connected to electric vehicles, but also to consumer products, to solar photovoltaics, or to buildings. In the case of smart grid, we find smart grid innovation in buildings, in electric vehicles, in solar, but also in various production process, or in energy efficiency of the digital technologies, such as data hubs, for instance. Carbon capture and storage is likewise pervasive in all sectors where there is a combustion of fossil fuels, and hydrogen is well known and hype now as a way to decarbonize sectors that are very hard to decarbonize, such as long-haul transportation, but also chemicals, buildings, or steel manufacturing, for instance. So these are critical instrumental technologies in order to unlock the transition in all sectors where the low-hanging fruit have been already exploited. Let me illustrate this with one example, the example of road transportation, so the car industry. We could see in the patent data that actually in terms of research, in terms of innovation, the transition already took place in 2011. You can see in light blue here, the number of patents filed related to combustion engines, to more efficient combustion engine, and in dark blue, the number of patents related to electric vehicles. And you see that the efforts of the industry overall has shifted as soon as 2010, 2011 from cleaner fossil fuel engines to electric propulsion, which has been seen a few years later. Actually, we are seeing now in the products, in the commercialization of electric cars, which is gaining increasing momentum. So in that respect, the car industry is leading the pack. It has been setting the example very much as a result of tight regulations, for instance, in the EU. The progress that has been made in this sector, for instance, with respect to batteries, with electricity storage, will spill over in other sectors. And if the transition to net zero is expected to succeed, we shall expect more sectors to shift in the same way, first in terms of research, and second in terms of products and technology deployment in the market. So I mentioned the car industry because it has been by far so until now the leading industry in terms of contribution to innovation in the field of clean energy. You can see in the top 15 patent applicants on this chart that most of them, those that are highlighted in red, are from the car industry or from their suppliers of batteries, for instance. So they are also leading the effort in terms of quantities of patents and innovation efforts. But we should expect other industries to follow. Another second example of the important role, so by mentioning the car industry, I was implicitly referring to batteries and to smart grids and to hydrogen in terms of enabling technologies. To cite just another example, solar photovoltaic energy. So the technology is mature. The costs have been cut by 90% over the past decade, but innovation is not over there. And now innovation is about transversal technologies, enabling technologies. And this is what we see in the patent. The efforts of patenting are shifted to organic PV cells that can be used for the Internet of Things. Actually, smart objects can become autonomous thanks to this kind of organic PV cells. So this is the next wave coming. And likewise, we see increasing focus of innovation on smart mounting and trackings. So making the PV panel smart enough to follow the circuit, in short. So this is another example of smart grids as an enabling technology. As a few last remarks to conclude my presentation, I would like, especially in the context of this event, to underline the highly important role of fundamental research. So I have been talking about the industry, but fundamental research is highly important, especially in some of the technologies that are critical to the energy transition. And this is illustrated in this chart, where you can see the share of patents that are contributed by universities or research organizations. And you see that in the middle, you have the enabling technologies like hydrogen, carbon capture, or other grid storage. You see that you have still a high share of university research here. These are the technologies that need to be further developed and pushed to the market, and universities have a very important role to play in that respect. Likewise, there is progress to be done in chemical and oil refining. And there again, universities play an important role, as well as in bioenergy, fuel from waste, or nuclear energy, for instance. And my very last remarks concern the geography of innovation, which is also documented in our study. On this chart, you can see the main sectors of excellence of several world regions when it comes to low carbon energy. And a close look at this chart shows that, in fact, these world regions are very different areas of excellence. For instance, in the US, you have an excellence specialization in aviation, bioenergy, carbon capture, nuclear, so very much related to fuel to combustion related technologies. In Europe, there is a strength in wind, railways, solar, or ocean, so renewables and railways. Or while in Japan or Korea, it is very closely related to batteries or hydrogen. What does it mean? It means that there is a strong complementarity between the international R&D efforts done across the world. That not all regions are at the frontier of all technology fields, and there is room and high benefits in cooperation, in collaboration, in innovation, in research and development, and technology diffusion. So that is I think also a valuable point to underline today. The collaboration matters in order to accelerate the development and deployment of these low carbon energies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mener. We are very pleased to listen to your perspective, particularly with respect to the patents. You talked about that 60% of the patents are on energy supply and efficiency. You've actually positioned energy supply and efficiency at the center of this whole movement. And Mr. Ambassador has underlined a collaborative effort. I would like to address a question. In your opinion, which technologies will lead to this transformation, Because I think we are all looking at it from a holistic and integrated point of view. Of course, energy, mobility are important, but do you think, first I'm addressing this question to Mr. Ambassador, do you think that alternative food and feedstocks, research on that, or on digital and smart technologies, will they have as big importance in this transformation as energy supply and efficiency?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I think the beauty of research and innovation is that it can be disruptive, that you can find solutions where no bureaucrat or no politician has ever thought that the solution could lie. So I think the support for research and innovation must be open to the results. And we have seen through what the European Patent Office colleague has shown to us, the wide range of areas in which research is required and where progress through research is possible. So I think from a standpoint of view of public administration, we should rather proceed a bit as we proceeded with the vaccines in the pandemic. That is, we want vaccines which are efficient and which are safe. We want them to be then tested, but we are not telling the researchers what kind of technology, what kind of method, what kind of vaccines they should develop, but we want results. So we should measure the outcome of research by its results and have good standards so that we know if hydrogen is used, it's really green hydrogen. It is what really helps for transformation. If we do storage, it is energy storage, which helps us to compensate for the fluctuations in renewable energies at the different places. It's not only storage of energy for cars, but it's also for houses. It can be at other occasions. So honestly, I think if the bureaucratic administration or the politics say this is the solution for the future, we are actually cutting off imagination. We are cutting off research. We are cutting off the possibility to find disruptive innovations and developments which we were not able to think of. So really, we need to think about it as from the state side, from the side of the results, not from the input. You have to produce the input, and then it will work. Thank you.
Yes, we have a saying in Turkish, the water finds its way, and Mr. Menir has actually demonstrated it, because different regions are keeping it or holding from different edges of the problem, contributing, and there is a complementarity in efforts. Yes, thank you very much. My next question is to Mr. Özkadı. Is there a plan for financing this green transformation in Turkey?
Thank you, Fazilet Hanım. First of all, really, it's a very good, excellent the panel and the webinar that I would like to thank you. And thank you for your excellent question. I would like to approach in two ways. The one is the following. As known, according to the existing knowledge, Turkey can be affected by the CBAM, which means the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Most probably, as Turkey, we will need to establish a kind of the ETS system in Turkey. This ETS will be in line with the EU ETS. If we can achieve this, there will be a fund which will be collected. And in Turkey, we have to use this fund for only green transition, carbon transition path. For the second way, which is important for the TÜSİAD member and the private companies. This is about to reach the efficient financing. I mean, for example, the green bond, the sustainability bond, even social bond will be more important in the near future due to the fact that the private companies should invest in ESG structure. If we do this, I believe that the reaching the efficient finance will be easier than today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're looking forward to new developments in the country. And my next question is to Mr. Menir. How would you evaluate the distribution of respective contributions of academia and industry in these patents? And when I say industry, large companies, SMEs, maybe startups, do you think startups are actually leading somehow this disruptive change in the society perspective to a greener world because they are from a younger generation? Or is it the larger companies that are leading because they have more access to finance?
That's a very good question. Thank you. I would say that startups certainly have a role to play next to large companies and universities, and perhaps between often universities and large companies, because the research stemming from universities takes the form of startups very often. And I would say in our case, it's especially what I would call deep tech startups. So not a startup that simply opens a website or something like that, a startup that really develops technologies, invests in research, and brings new technology to the market. Mr. Meyer-Landrú mentioned that research innovation can come from everywhere, can be disruptive. And so I think in some respects, large companies are well equipped to carry out long-term research programs, to have the time to develop the capacity to bring technology to market, but not always the incentives. And sometimes it's easier to disrupt things from the outside, and startups are the perfect instrument for that. So in my view, they complement, and they are very important to complement the large companies in that respect.
Thank you very much. And my last question is to Dr. Kılkış, as representing the Turkish R&D ecosystem. There is a lot of change in support mechanisms. New support mechanisms are being introduced. What do you think would be the impact of pre-competitive research platforms within this context? Because as we know that there is a collaboration of different stakeholders, and TÜBİTAK has introduced some programs in that respect. Could you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Thank you for the excellent question. It's very important. Because we know where we need to go. We know we need to go to the zero emissions, the zero carbon emissions. And but there's always a question how to reach there. How is asking a question about the transition, it's a process. And when we look, so we know the impact that we want to achieve, but how to achieve that impact, and we take a step back, then from the beginning, the very beginning of the R&D and innovation process, we know that we need to support collaboration. Collaboration between the universities, the research institutes, and the industry. And when even starting at the idea stage, the pre-competitive research stage, because we know if the collaboration starts from the very beginning, it can continue. There's also, we are very familiar with technology readiness levels, but there's also something that we as TÜBİTAK, we share. There's impact readiness levels, and the impact readiness levels changes by the different collaboration or by the different co-creation that's taking place in the innovation ecosystem. So for example, when there's collaboration in the pre-competitive stage, we can say this process, it can have a higher impact potential because, for example, in the support programs opened by TÜBİTAK to increase collaboration in the pre-competitive research, I gave the example of the high technology platforms. It's one of the most important flagship programs of TÜBİTAK, given great importance by the president of TÜBİTAK. And in this, we are trying to support the pre-competitive collaboration of our research universities, our candidate research universities, our research institutes supported under the 6550 law for the research infrastructure. And when there is collaboration with the technology transfer offices, collaboration with the industry, big firms, SMEs, then we know it's on a good path. Because that collaboration in the pre-competitive stage, it can accelerate the entire process. As we saw in the presentation of the European Patent Office, especially in their collaboration with the International Energy Agency, there's a lot of technologies that are still needed to be maturing, and how to accelerate this. So I think they also have an accelerated energy innovation scenario. How to accelerate this is trying to get the some time gain, trying to gain some years. And when we accelerate the pre-competitive stage, then it can accelerate the entire process, because as TÜBİTAK designed, we have high technology platforms, and then we have the SIAM mechanism, which is the industry innovation network mechanism. These two, so the university with the center, with the university and research infrastructure in the center, they can start the ideas, they can start the innovative research and advanced research and technologies, but then it needs to continue so the industry can scale it up. The industry can bring the innovative technological prototypes into some kind of a greater near the commercialization stage. So if these connections are made early in the process, so the question was how to reach our targets. That entire process of the acceleration will continue. And not only in the research support mechanisms, but also how the human resources are being raised. So another initiative of Professor Mandal, we started the industry doctorate program. And in this, the industry is raising the human resources together with the universities in their priority areas. So this could be, and it already is, sustainability, environmental technologies, advanced materials. And through this way, again, from the start of the process onwards, these collaborations can continue when the technology needs to scale up, or continue in new pilot phase demonstrations. And this way we can accelerate the impact. We also, another program, it's called the patent license. A lot of the patent ideas, it can be brilliant, but if they're not transferred to the industry that can manufacture and upscale and diffuse these innovations, then we're still far from the impact. So in the TÜBİTAK patent license program, we are bringing the technology holders with the technology seekers and the manufacturers or the industry, and then we can make the connections faster. So we have more than 30 type of projects, patent license projects, and in this way, we're allowing the patents to be applied and implemented. So these are some of our programs, but if we don't have the collaboration, the pre-competitive research stage, it's very important because we need collaboration throughout the process.
Yes, thank you very much. You have put forward your perspective from a funding institute side. And as SUNUM, we are actually in the middle of a pre-competitive research platform, one of those high technology platforms in nanotechnology. And it's been going on for more than 9 months now. And Arçelik is one of our collaborators. We have observed that this has created a paradigm change, a culture change in the whole ecosystem. When we started 2 years ago, the whole idea was so new, and it was difficult for our academic partners and also for our industrial partners to actually understand that they are coming together under a large umbrella and thinking, putting all their assets and all their intellect to solving one challenge that has been defined, the theme of the platform. Now we are going for a second platform for the next call. And we have found out that actually there has been a cultural change, and the companies and the academia are more ready to accept and think like this collaboratively in this co-learning and co-creating environment. And we have come to the same point in a far less time than initially. So I have observed firsthand that this modification, this disruptive change in the ecosystem led by TÜBİTAK and all the assisting partners have actually resulted in an impact, in a social or an academic cultural impact. So we thank you for your contributions in that respect as well. There are many more questions from our participants, but our time is up, so I don't want to engage you further. It has been a pleasure moderating this panel, and I really have appreciated your time and efforts and your contributions. We have hope to repeat this with another theme sometime in the near future. Thank you very much.